It was never supposed to be like this. Back in the halcyon days of Overwatch's alpha and beta, one hero stood atop the early meta. A call to arms to his teammates, and an announcement to all enemies that inevitable death would soon be visited upon them. You know him and you probably hate him, it's Bastion. And let me tell you, this bucket of bolts has had a rough life. This is the tragic tale of the incredibly brief rise and catastrophic, relentlessly prolonged fall of Overwatch's forgotten son. And if you're a Bastion main, don't worry, we see you. Let us know what buffs you think your main man needs to get himself back on his feet. Bastion is a peace-loving robot at heart. He likes to protect the birds, and sometimes even the things that aren't the birds, from the ravages of the Omnic crisis that devastated Overwatch's world. But initially, Bastion was programmed to destroy, and back in the beta, he did so with extreme efficiency. Armed with a machine gun, a Gatling turret, and a shield, Bastion was out for blood in the beta. Such was this robotic menace's power that there were actually calls from players lucky enough to test the game that the peace-loving, if occasionally homicidal robot was too powerful to even remain part of the Overwatch hero pool. How the mighty have fallen. Bastion may not have been removed from the game, but honestly, it would have been an act of mercy at this point. His effective removal was almost immediately seen to by the player base after a few nerfs to our beloved Bastion, as pretty much everyone unanimously concluded that he wasn't even worth the effort it would cost to scrap him. Every other Overwatch hero has had their chance in the meta spotlight at some point, whether it's Pharah and Mercy terrorizing the skies above the battlefield, Mei and Reaper shredding tanks like paper kites in a shotgun shell-filled blizzard, or the D.Va and Wrecking Ball combo that's currently obliterating the Overwatch League. Thanks to an ever-shifting meta, every hero has seen a game-changing buff or nerf cause them to rise up the pick leaderboard, except one. Despite being a member of the Overwatch hero cast since literally day one, Bastion has remained consistently bottom of any pick table worth the paper it's written on, failing at almost every level of play from casual fans to the pros. You want to know how often Bastion sees play in the Overwatch League? Go on, guess. Chances are you're not even close. 0.1%. He's officially the least used hero in the entire league, having seen a total of 10 minutes of play throughout the 2021 season out of literally hundreds of hours of Overwatch. The neglected robot has remained at the bottom of the loaded machine gun barrel for almost his entire life in the Overwatch League, only seeing a significant amount of play once at the 2019 playoffs. And even among us mere mortal players, he's still welded to the base of the pick leaderboard, with around only 0.3% of players giving Bastion the benefit of the doubt in the last 6 months or so. So why is this murderous machine so maligned? Bastion was designed to be a powerhouse of the Overwatch scene. Even once the game was out of beta and the devs removed the shield that protected Bastion in turret form, the cowards, he still performed incredibly well, even if he wasn't quite the broken monster he'd been before. That was before a series of nerfs around a month after the game finally went live on console that saw the Omnic Overlord's rule as a top meta pick brought to a sudden and devastating end. And since then, he's occupied a pretty weird space within the Overwatch hero community. To put it bluntly, Bastion's viability essentially depends on how good you are at the game, simultaneously being a nightmare for lower ranked players to deal with, and too easily countered once team tactics go beyond objective, aim and shoot. Which is unfortunate, because that's basically the only thing Bastion can do. He might hit like a freight train with a nuke strapped to the front, but when it comes to mobility, well, Bastion doesn't really have any. Getting the best out of him requires consistent switches between his two configurations, Recon and Sentry, and while you can at least move in Recon mode, Bastion Sentry leaves him completely immobile. The fact is, you're one flank or well-placed Widow shot away from getting yourself kicked back to respawn. In a hero shooter which emphasises quick movement and on-your-toes tactics and decisions, Bastion's slower set-up and see playstyle and gargantuan hitbox jars against what pretty much every other DPS hero in the game is trying to do. Picking a corner and letting your turrets go burr until you win might sound great in theory, but there's no use burning through bullets when everyone else on the battlefield can just walk around you and pick off your bright blue shoot me here weak spot. Which leads us to another issue with Bastion. In order for this DPS juggernaut to reach his potential, your entire team has to be built around keeping him in one piece. You need a healer, ideally a Mercy, to keep him alive and shredding, another fast moving DPS to sweep up kills once they've been weakened by turret fire, as well as at least one tank willing to babysit you to take the brunt of incoming fire, because at 200 HP with a bit of armor chucked in for good measure, you aren't going to live long with a Reaper or an Echo breathing down your neck. Your squad has to be entirely geared to keeping Bastion alive at all costs, so unless you're 6-stacking with comms, it's a pretty tall order for anyone in the solo queue to run Bastion in a way that's going to end in anything but rage quits from your own team as you get obliterated in 1v1s over and over again. The tactic of treating Bastion like the VIP of the team was actually the basis for his one and only time in the meta spotlight, the pirate ship comp. This surprise tactic became a staple in the Overwatch League and regular play for a little while thanks to its potency and escort, especially on Junkertown. The idea is to station your Bastion on the payload as quickly as possible, reconfigure to turret mode, and get cozy. As for the rest of you landlubbers, it's your job to protect the captain with your lives. The supports pump your own personal weapon of mass destruction with boost juice and keep him healthy, while the tanks, ideally Orisa and Rhine, use their shield abilities to cover as much damage as possible. It was actually a pretty potent combo, with plenty of variation to keep things spicy. Why not throw your Torb turret up there as well for a bit of turret-on-turret action, and variants of it saw sustained play in the Overwatch League during Bastion's short 2019 renaissance. The downbeat droid was, albeit briefly, back with a vengeance, culminating in a legendary Bastion play, actually helping San Francisco Shock take home the win in the Overwatch League Grand Finals in 2019. Shock's DPS Starla Architect, utilising the Omnic's most powerful technique, his tank configuration, to blast himself into the air onto a chandelier on Eichenwalde leading up to the final stretch of the map. A perfect spot to dole out some cathartic justice onto all those who had ever doubted the big friendly robot. Architect and Bastion secured the final checkpoint, the final map, and the 2019 Overwatch League title. But since then, Overwatch's forgotten son has had precious little to celebrate. More changes followed his Overwatch League apex, nerfing him back into the ground, and Blizzard and the rest of the Overwatch player base have allowed him to rust away in off-meta obscurity. When pros are capable of using a ridiculous range of the hero pool, and around 70 to 80% of them all counter Bastion in one way or another, the fact is he never really stood a chance. All it takes is a charge from Rhine, a halt from Orisa, a gravitic flux from Sigma, a self-destruct from D.Va, an EMP from Sombra. The list of counters for the battered bot are honestly endless. In almost every conceivable 1v1 situation, Bastion loses, thanks to his poor mobility, limited self-heal potential, and massive hitbox. As a final kick in the bolts, Bastion's remained largely untouched by devs since his last balance update back in mid-2020, another nerf for what it's worth, more than a year ago. But there could yet be hope that Bastion can return as a force to the Overwatch scene once again. As the old saying goes, we can rebuild him, we have the technology, and that seems to be exactly what devs intend to do in Overwatch 2. A massive and much needed rework is reportedly on the cards for this misunderstood machine man. Among the touted upgrades for our mechanical monster are adding range to his limited kit, which should make him a bit more useful at breaking comps that utilise snipers, as well as finally, mercifully, giving his sentry form some movement, allowing him to reposition himself more easily while dealing with those pesky DPS flankers. It's no shield, but at least Bastion will actually stand a chance at surviving a gunfight. It's likely he'll pack less of a punch to compensate for these changes, and chances are his self-heal will either be scrapped or at the very least nerfed. But with a kit that actually fits into the game Bastion is playing, Overwatch 2 might just bring this piece of scrap metal back to life. After all, what's a tragic fall without the hope of a redemptive rise?